Thanks. Okay, so I will call to order the May 9th, 2024 meeting of the Concord Transportation Advisory Committee. The first order of business is to review and approve minutes, and we have one set. Before we do that, is there anybody who will volunteer to write the minutes for this meeting?
I will write the minutes.
Thank you, Laura. That's great. So I just sent Nick and Phil a marked up version of the minutes, which
Was this on email or as part of the
email? I just
Okay.
sent email. I thought that might be easier than share screen business and stuff. But anyway,
Okay.
what I did was I simply corrected some spellings and made things into complete sentences, but didn't really change the sense of it. So that it'll be easier for people to read it in the future. And if people approve it or we have some other changes, I can then send those on to Elizabeth to put in as approved minutes. I'll give you a minute to take a look.
If you send them to me and Heather,
I will do that.
one of us will.
Okay. I don't think I changed the
The only,
sense of
you said
anything.
the suggestion was mad to
Oh,
consider.
okay, so
made.
we'll correct that. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Good.
Down under discussion of grant funding sources, the third line, there is not currently.
Say that again. Which one? Oh, there. Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
Mhm.
For some reason, using the markup function is not something that I'm comfortable with.
I don't like it, but
But it's the way
Yeah.
it does put it all. in
This
one
was
document.
this is a very efficient way to do it, though.
yes,
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
There's one comprehensive transportation plan.
Yes,
You made, the suggestion was made to consider.
right. Okay, we got that. Yep.
You got that one already? Okay.
Yes, we have the lower pointed down.
Okay, I'll second Laura's motion.
Okay, Laura,
Yay.
Nick, Phil,
Aye.
and I'm an I as well. Okay, so we'll accept these minutes as amended. And I will send them to, Elizabeth and Heather. Okay, as far as the chair's report, so one thing is that last Friday, I joined the meeting with town planner Elizabeth Hughes, deputy town manager Megan Zanuto, head of public works Alan Cathcart, and town engineer Steve Dukron, and we discussed a number of things related to the comprehensive transportation plan, and also about figuring out the best way the town can organize the different staffs and the relevant committees, including TAC and the town transportation management group. So we'll go into that later because there's a comprehensive plan update and item on tax rolls later in the agenda. The other thing is, as was mentioned here before the meeting started, on the 5th, there was an event that Phil and Laura helped organize for introducing young bicycle riders into teaching them more safety rules and getting them a chance to kind of get more comfortable on their vehicles. And there were some other groups there, a table for the Friends of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail regional organization, and some other things, and some interesting bicycles and e-bikes and whatever. So Laura or Phil, either of you want to kind of just add to that comment?
Sure. So it was called the West Concord Family Bike Fest. We held it at the Bradford Mill back parking lot, and it was a gray and a little bit drizzly day. So I think it was well attended for being a gray and drizzly day, but I think we would have had more folks if it had been a sunny day. The folks who came, though, said that it was very helpful for their kids and helpful for the adults who got to test ride some of the bikes that were there. We had a selection of like regular e-bikes, cargo bikes for families, and then several adaptive tricycles for folks that have mobility limitations. We had one of the bikes we borrowed from Acton's rec department. They have a adaptive bike lending program that comes out of Nara Park. And so folks can go, for Acton residents, it's actually free. Anybody can go and take out one of their adaptive bikes for the day, and they have a very wide selection of bikes. Some of them are tricycles for folks with balance issues or other limitations mobility wise, but they have like a very wide selection of different adaptive bikes. And then for non-residents of Acton, it's a very minimal fee. I think it's like $5 for the day to take bikes out of Nora Park, and you can go along the Bruce Freeman. So yeah, that was it was a great first. Well, it was actually sort of a second event. We did one in the fall with the library. We had that one over at the Harvey Wheeler, and that one was good, but that parking lot was not ideal because of the slope and the many uses for that parking lot. So the Bradford Mill was really fantastic
I thought,
location
yeah,
for it.
one takeaway is that that's an excellent location, and plenty of room for all those functions.
Yeah,
And you could, you know, if there was more attendance, you could sort of rope off certain areas for the different purposes.
Yeah.
And the different classes of riders. So, and I think we should thank whoever offered the space.
yes,
It's also, you know, people just have to get to, it isn't in an odd place. It's, you just get to West Concord and it's easy to find, so.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Or if I can ask, because there may be some leftover funds in the planning division budget.
Mhm.
Regarding transportation.
Mhm.
So I know with our bike share, we only have 2 adaptive bikes.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering if, if based on what this weekend,
Mhm.
if you think the adaptive trike is something that we should look into.
Yeah.
getting.
I'd be happy to have a meeting with you, and
Okay.
it might be a nice idea to, I could reach out to the Council on Aging and ask if they have any suggestions. And I had a great conversation with some folks at the Concord Over 60 group,
Okay.
and one of them actually shared an adaptive mobility device with me that I was not familiar with, which is actually it's a walking aid. Instead of it being a bicycle, it's more for walkers. And since we can have a chat.
Yeah.
Got lots of ideas.
Okay.
Moral of the story.
I don't know if I have enough money to,
Well,
cover all your ideas, but.
Well, I mean, like in terms of picking one that might be a really good, like
let's pick
addition to
one,
the fleet.
yeah.
I can talk with the stakeholders and see
Yeah.
what might be the best option.
Yeah, and just pick one.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what, whether the budget can cover it.
That sounds great.
Yeah, awesome.
So, if I can just throw in,
Sure.
one piece of information, before my wife bought her, she has a recumbent trike that we actually brought down. It's an e-trike. But we were fortunate enough to, have, sort of a demo day at a bike dealer. And that was a lot of fun. We got to see a lot of different styles and types of bicycles. So, I can either talk with Laura, Laura, or participate in that, and I'll convey that information too, because we were probably had maybe 6 or 7 different companies that my wife was had an opportunity to ride the bikes, and they're all a little different, and some of them I think have advantages and disadvantages, which might want to go into the thinking as to what you want to buy.
It's also good to find a way to just publicize either through the Council on Aging, Commission on Disability Commission, or the tech about what these options are for more people.
Yep. And the person who actually put on this demo was someone who was he was a sole individual nonprofit who was riding around the country with a trailer with these vehicles in the trailer, allowing people to demonstrate them and try them, and then they would go to the bike shop. So he would make an arrangement with a bike shop to park his truck in their parking lot and then have these available, and then the bike shop would actually sell the vehicle. So it was kind of cool, and I can send you a link to his website so you can see what I'm talking about. He had some mobility issues, which is how he got into it in the first place.
Okay, thanks. Okay,
The last thing I'll say about this is that it would be remiss of me to not say that the Fowler Library was really the driving force behind that event, and they
Really?
should get a massive credit for that.
okay.
Oh.
They did a lot of the legwork on promoting it and publicizing it, and
Mm,
I mean, Phil and I did the education and the demo piece of it, but the event really happened because the librarians at the Fowler Library wanted that to happen. And we should acknowledge that they just received the Sustainable Library Award. And I was not surprised when I saw that, given how fabulous the librarians have been
Yeah.
about like the sustainable transportation piece.
So that may be, just a quick, um, letter to
Yeah.
the Concord Bridge,
Mm.
thanking, Bradford Mill and the library.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, if,
I can't remember, is TAC down members as well?
Say that again?
I don't, is TAC, are you looking for additional members?
yes,
Because in your little thank you thing that you send to the bridge, you could say,
Yeah,
and if
right.
anybody's interested, we're doing so many things. Put in a volunteer card.
well, I mean, if people, like, I could write a brief note to the bridge thanking Fowler Library and Bradford Mill for help with that event, and also, by the way, TAC is always looking for members and other involved, other individuals who want to be involved in transportation.
If you're writing that, I would also recommend reaching out to Beth Williams,
Mhm.
as you're writing it, to, and including in that, an announcement that the Minuteman Bike Share has relaunched and the bikes are available, and describing the adaptive trikes that are in the fleet as well as the regular bikes.
Okay.
Because that was part of the event, was to relaunch the bike share.
That's true.
I know she's
It's
out
out
this week,
Mhm.
but she may already have.
She may already have a press release
Yeah.
prepared.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll coordinate with her and take care of that sooner or later. Okay, so that ends chair's report. So item 3 on the agenda, what I put in is a discussion of what things Concord would like to request from the MBTA. So the thought here, and I brought this up at the meeting I had last Friday with the staff team, is that it's come to our attention that there are a number of things. I've heard a number of times from different people about things that they would like the MBTA to do, or questions, requests, pointing out problems, etc. And I think it's effective and efficient if we can gather all of these things together and flag them, and then give that list, communicate that list to staff, so that staff can potentially request a meeting with their counterparts at MBTA and go over these all at once. Because I've heard multiple cases of significant lack of progress on a single issue by issue basis, and also, and I think there's a lot of public interest. Some of these are very, very high public interest items. I'll list a few that I know of. Anyway, I think it could be much more effective. Another point that was mentioned to me by staff and pointed out to me by staff is that the MBTA also, like off and on, is requesting things from the town. So the discussion can be sort of a two-way thing about, how do we collaborate to help everybody work well, serve the residents of Concord and visitors. So not a comprehensive list, but as specific items. One is there is a conceptual. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Just make a suggestion, because you have a lot of agenda topics. Why don't you, if you have a list, why don't you send it around, and why don't we all just add to it things we think are missing? And then I think the issue is sort of, and our role is sort of to pull it together, prioritize it as you were suggesting. Say what we think is
Well,
important.
Okay, Laura?
Just building off of that, could we maybe use this? We have a time limit for this agenda item and use this as a brainstorming session, and then we'll have a list to work from. We can all go home, think about it, add to it, come back next meeting with a little bit, so we can refine it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Cause I do think it would be great to hear, I'd love to hear like your thoughts, Nick, about this, so we could just get the juices flowing, as it
Right,
were.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I want to, yeah, I don't think we need to speak on it more than 10 minutes, but I just want to kick it off because I think a simple list, well, there's a list, but some of these need a little explanation and there's some vagueness about some things. So I'm going to just throw out a few things. As a start the ball rolling. Number one is there is a lot of public interest and concern and work been done about trying to improve the safety for cyclists and pedestrians and park users at Junction Park in West Concord Center. And there is a sort of conceptual plan or idea that would allow for a smoother bicycle path separated from the park, which I think would make a lot of people happy. But apparently this requires an adjustment of the easements from the MBTA that sound reasonable, but I think it's an urgent safety problem with a lot of public support. So that's to me sort of a number one item. And there's been some discussions with MBTA, but I don't think I haven't heard that they've been very productive to date. Second one, and this is something that's been highlighted by the Commission on Disabilities, is and then the town engineer tells me it happens. It's basically at every single pedestrian crossing of tracks in town, there are those rubber pads, and then there's a flange way. There's a space for the wider flange of the railroad wheels to go in. And the small wheels at the front of some wheelchairs can get stuck in there. And the gentleman has gotten stuck twice in West Concord, had to be pulled out by people, passerbys. But there are technical concerns, the town engineer tells me, and it may, it's certainly a statewide or nationwide problem, because there's concern that if certain things are done to fill those gaps and then it freezes with ice, the train might derail. So it's a complicated thing, but I'm sure there are better and worse ways. And there may also be maintenance and inspection things, and evolving standards. So that's the second thing. Third thing is need for accessible boarding platforms at Thorough Depot, because with those steep steps, anybody who has trouble using narrow stairs, steep stairs, or has a child with them, or a bicycle, or packages, or suitcase, or is traveling with somebody who has those, would like to come to Concord or commute or whatever. So I think it has very broad interest and need. And in fact, in 2015, a select board member and Gene Goldsberry, the current and then chair of the Commission on Disabilities, met with somebody at MBTA. They got various kinds of not so helpful responses. The select board wrote a letter in 2015, but there's been no action since then. And it also has potentially relation to the 250th visitors here. Do we want to enable people to come without a car and have to find places to park it? Fourth one, I just learned this morning when I talked to select person Mark Howell. He said that at Cottage Lane, there's a past West Concord Center going outbound towards Fitchburg. There's apparently an area by the tracks where the MBTA stores or piles up various things like old pallets and maybe other debris, as some of the neighbors are referring to it. And there's a concern about whether that's appropriate or not, but I don't think some of the people in the neighborhood are happy with it. And a fifth one, which needs some further investigation and discovery, is apparently there was an original plan at both depots for there to be heated waiting rooms as an amenity to people using the trains.
Mm.
And this history goes back at least to 1988. I have some information that I can give to Elizabeth to pass on to people later.
That was number 4.
Number 5.
Oh, what was number
So-
4?
I have it in- I'll have it in
was
the
the
notes.
4 was the debris at Cottage Lane by
Oh,
Cottage Lane.
that's right, okay.
Well,
So,
it was a deed restriction back in 1960s. It was a deed
Okay,
when the T sold off the properties, goes back to the 60s.
yeah,
Okay.
not
A
an
deed,
no,
that,
yeah,
that
it's a,
waiting rooms are required.
okay, some kind of, and I found,
Next to mine.
you want to come
We
up?
didn't want
Okay.
them too close to it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, so I found, this is, Mary Weinberg, who was, active in those,
We found it, we
discussions.
discovered the deeds. They were hidden for a long time.
Okay, I found, Concord, I went to the, special collections at the library and have the 1988 article that you mentioned. So I will pass it on to the TAC and the staff.
And that article refers to, I told Steve Rossner, and he had knowledge of the deed, and that's how they got a waiting room there.
Okay, so, and this can be part of, forward-going negotiations. I think it's, probably the most productive way to pursue this is collect all these things and anything else people can think of. Flag these, give these to staff and have staff figure out who to talk to and get to the table. And I think, this, bringing things all together is gonna lead to a more comprehensive engagement with MBTA and better results, I think. Laura,
If you're finished, I have some things to
I'm
add to
finished.
your list.
I'm finished.
One thing that I've noticed is that we really need clearer signage at both stations indicating which track is track 1 and which track is track 2.
Mhm.
It took me a really long time to figure out where the signs were that indicated which track was which, and this is really important for visitors when there's track work and the trains are switching tracks. Because it'll say that all the trains are coming in on one track or another, and if you're not familiar
Mm,
with which one is inbound and outbound,
yeah.
that, I think that's a huge one. The other thing that's come up in discussions previously is, and this is a really big picture thing, but I think that the more we can keep talking about this is, in other places in this region, even along our line, MBTA is pursuing Rails with Trails projects. So if you look at the Fitchburg line in Belmont, they're constructing, next time you go into the city, look for the trail that they're constructing to the left of the tracks through Belmont and Weston. And there's this trail that's going to be paralleling the track for quite a ways. And I know that we are searching as a town for a way to connect the two town centers in a safe, separated way from Route 2. And if there was a potential to build a safe, separated trail that is, not next to cars, that would connect the two town centers, that would be adjacent to the rail line, I think that would really be the best case scenario for us in terms of connecting the two.
It's important to put that on the table.
Yeah, it's
That's-
important
I
to
think
put that on the
that's-
table. I mean, that's one of those projects that would take 20 years, but if you don't start now, it's never gonna happen.
Right.
So,
So Rails with Tails, project, and a particular example is connect the two towns, connect them.
And, I mean, thinking big picture, and I remember we had this discussion and Nick did point out that there's a Superfund site between West Concord and Acton. But if you were able to connect, I would love to see the whole line, but if you were able to connect Concord with Acton, for instance, the Acton train station, there is a rail trail that starts at the Acton train station. So we would be connecting the Reformatory Branch Trail to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail to the, I'm gonna forget the name of that rail trail, the one that goes between Acton and Maynard. And that is creating safe, separated infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists throughout the region. Like, that's one of those key missing places. So I think that's a really critical
It's
one.
important to put those on the map, on the table. Nick, did you have any?
Yes, one of the, when the planning board a couple of town meetings ago tried to put through zoning around Crosby's, market area, one of the big pushbacks from the neighborhood was the traffic because of the train crossing. And one of the things the MBTA should do and should have done is they should have constructed those platforms differently. The inbound platform should be on the east side of Sudbury Road and the outbound platform on the west side, or whichever makes sense, so that when the train comes in, it completely clears Sudbury Road when it stops. Okay, right now, I forget, I think it's the inbound train that when it stops, it blocks Sudbury Road for the whole time it's there. And it's just a horrible, there's always traffic backed up there. It was
Okay,
just,
so basically at that intersection, you're talking about what to do to reduce the blockage.
you gotta relocate them, you
Sudbury
have
Road.
to relocate one of the platforms so that the trains never block the intersection. They never block Sudbury Road when they're stopped, pick up
Right,
passengers.
well, I would, you know, this is something where, again, in my conversation, bringing this up with staff, I was told sort of not to get into detail, so I think, eliminating blocking of Sudbury Road is what we communicate to the MBTA, and they figure out how to do it.
Well, I'll tell you how they did it everywhere else.
Okay, fair enough, that could be
Yeah, that's
added,
fine, so, yeah.
But again, I don't want to ask for,
That's cool, that's good, I'm
you
fine
know
with
what I'm
that.
saying?
Yeah, the other thing is, with Laura on the shared use, if there's any way we can get, shared use for pedestrians and bicycles, adjacent to the MBTA right of way, that should be explored. More frequent service, and
Yeah.
thing I've been trying to push, the Economic Vitality Committee, I would hope would grab onto it, is I think it would be great if the MBTA had special trains to Concord, or at least publicize the existing trains to Concord on weekends. But for that to work, Concord needs to have a bus service meeting the trains to get people around.
Okay.
I do just want to second that. Perhaps that's so so obvious, but more service, like more
Yes,
frequent
more
service. I mean,
frequent
anytime
service.
we talk to MBTA, it should be, please, we would love more trains.
Yeah.
Especially on the, you know, especially on the weekend, so we don't have those wide wide gaps in service on Sundays. I think those are a real challenge for people. Some other, I mean, the heated waiting room, I think is great. I think that thinking about the train station as a mobility hub, and having great bicycle parking in Concord Center. We've also, I know that Aaron looked into the possibility of trying to figure out a place to put a Minuteman bike share station at Concord Depot, but because the town did not own any land at Concord Depot, that wasn't an option. So working with MBTA to maybe site one of the Minuteman bike share stations at the Concord Depot location, because if you have to walk all the way to the visitor center to get to the bikes, you know, not that it replaces a local bus service, but we have a bike share. It really should be at both of our train stations.
Yeah, and the thought too, I mean, we have commuter parking of some sort, which, by the way, I don't know, there's probably complications about that and exactly who controls it and what the rules are and how they change and all that. But you know, bicycle parking at the train stations would be nice, because you could get to the train from your home, doing from, you know, that last mile with a bicycle, and then get on the train to go into Boston or whatever. So I think bicycle parking and then the, you know, bike share, those are good things.
I would say covered.
One more
parking.
item for me. I think it's urgent that the MBTA plan to put on extra trains for the Concord 250 celebration. That one day, you know, I have
You don't need to
a
add
book
that.
that can tell you.
Okay,
Well,
that's
this
being
isn't-
discussed already.
So I'm gonna, when you're done, I'm gonna give you my update from the staff perspective.
That would be great.
Yeah, I think they're ready. Phil, do you have anything to add?
That's it. That's it.
The only thing I would add is, I think it would be good if we could encourage the T to provide more information about the ride, you know, that car service that they have. Because, you know, I would think that I would be now in the target audience, and I have never received anything directly from the T or from the state saying it even exists. I know it exists, obviously. But I think that's a kind of helpful service and maybe something that we could expand to provide access between West Concord and Concord Center. So, if people knew, if the tea was prepared, if they had, instead of just cars, maybe they had SUVs or little vans or something like that, maybe that would be a bridge, so to speak, between having a regular shuttle between the two sides of town and what we have now, which is nothing.
This may be a question for the town and not for MBTA, but I do know that MBTA has a discount program for students that towns have to opt into. There may even be a fee involved. I'm not done the research to know what's involved in that, but I do not believe, Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that we participate in that. But I think it would be great for
Yeah.
us to offer more discounted fares for students, because students could use, I mean, just at bare minimum, using it to go between West Concord and Concord Center.
Yeah, it's sort of a chicken and egg thing that the number of trains is sometimes based on the usage, and the usage depends on all these things like frequency of service and amenities and safety and all that. Okay, Elizabeth? Oh, I'm sorry, Terry?
Great suggestions. And the only thing that I didn't hear was to figure out how to reinstitute that service between Concord and West Concord centers that used to run, I guess, years ago. I don't know how they do it or whatever, but I've heard there were trains like every hour between the two village centers, and that they can't do it anymore, but I don't know why not.
Well, there is a train between Concord and West Concord every hour.
Yeah,
There is,
there is. That's the regular schedule. on
That's
weekdays.
the regular schedule.
but you
Okay.
were just saying, is that only on weekdays?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so then it's all day, every hour, all
No, it's
day?
even more frequent during rush hour. The
Right,
slow time is once an hour.
okay. All right, thanks.
Okay.
I'd be happy to drop off a train schedule at your house, Terry. I
No,
have
no,
extras.
no, I know how to get one.
Okay, let's
I have paper copies.
let's move on. So the next thing.
Oh, well, let's let Elizabeth.
Oh, I'm sorry,
No,
Elizabeth,
that's
sorry.
okay.
Yeah, anyway.
All right, so,
Drink some
starting,
coffee.
yeah, starting with the first one, which is Junction Park.
Mhm.
So. With Marcia leaving, it definitely created quite, first a void.
Mhm.
And then we are feeling the vacuum as, knowledge got, sucked out of a lot of things that were happening. I am working with the deputy town manager and myself, and we'll probably be coming back to TAC. We first need to touch base with the right people at the MBTA. Marcia took there were a bunch of different sketches of how to solve the Junction Park problem, and ended up there's Junction Park 4 scheme, which I can bring up. And this is what was the concept that had the consensus, where if you notice, and this is where the conversation with Mass DOT is, this little teeny strip right here is what would be needed. Right there is the edge of parking. I think it's about a 1-foot strip. To just, and then portions of the current retention basins. I think there's a little one here and a little one here. That would have to be, thought out whether, a teeny retention basin needs to be here, or so. That was the conversation that needs to happen. So working with the engineering division, I have contacts at MBTA, they have contacts through Megan. Getting in touch with them. What we do need to do is we have a survey of this portion of the parking lot. To see what happens to the existing row of parking right here. With taking that foot strip, it would probably end up. Possibly being 2 feet, or, you know, because you'll have to have some curbing separation. You know, so there's, you know, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of fine details. But at least getting the conversation going on whether they would be amenable to, you know. It would probably be a long-term lease or, you know, whatever the option is, but so this is something that we are moving forward with. I don't know if Terry can provide an update, but currently the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. I don't know if this is on your agenda to talk about. I know the select board are going to talk about it, but currently they do not have enough members to even meet as a quorum. So whether, whether that advisory committee is gonna be, disband and, maybe that role that kind of started taking on becomes a role for TAC. I know TAC has previously talked about, like a bike and ped subcommittee. I'm going to advocate for no additional subcommittees. All of TAC, you all have, knowledge and expertise and interest, and there's no reason why, another subcommittee means another agendas, minutes, quorums.
Yeah. It's a committee.
It's a committee. It's so we're, like Natural Resources Committee, I think, has 4 different subcommittees, and
And it burdens
Well,
staff.
I think what we really need to do is, as a committee, we need to take on, each of us can take on a thing that we're gonna work on and bring it back. And then you don't need the subcommittee and you don't need the minutes and,
There was also with, I want to make a couple comments. One is, Elizabeth, that in terms, at least from my point of view, in terms of creating this list here, it's not at all to complain that staff has not been.
oh, no, I
solving all
know
these
that,
things.
but I'm
It's
just,
more to put wind in the sails
Yeah.
of the.
but I'm
of the
just,
whole
I'm just
effort.
giving you, an
I
update
appreciate it.
because, when
It
you
helps.
put
All we
together
know.
a letter, to MB.
it needs to be
to
informed
MBTA.
by what's actually happening.
Yeah, I want to catch you up to, where we
Well,
are.
I'm thinking,
So,
that it wouldn't, I'm not thinking of a letter right now. That's why I said at first, I'm sorry, discuss this. I think we, as Nick had said and Laura, that we all think about this further, potentially add things or refine things, and then flag these for staff. And then staff is going to continue, give us updates of what's going on. But staff can also say to the MBTA, we have this citizen committee, we have this public concern about these things. Can we discuss all of these together, get them all moving, different wheels moving different places.
so, I mean,
Just, I wanna make sure that I've got this in the notes correctly. So the planning department's been working on.
vision, we're not at the
Division, excuse me, has been working on on an update, on potential changes to the Junction Park, and you're going to have a meeting with MBTA, or you've already, or,
No, so,
Okay.
so right now, the planning division, we're trying to, from where, the previous Junction Park. Conversations ended when Marshall left,
Mhm,
be creating a separate
right,
bike and pedestrian. We're now, moving forward with where that consensus ended. With reaching out to the MBTA to talk about the potential to I guess get an easement for a small strip of the parking lot to facilitate the project moving forward.
got it.
So the next one, the track gap issue,
Mhm.
is something that's on the next transportation management group, the staff group. The town engineer is on vacation this week and part of next week. But the transportation management group is going to basically have a discussion about this and how to advance that to the MBTA through probably the maintenance division,
Mhm.
and see what the options are. Because there may not be any options, but,
Mhm.
so that is already moving forward, that I can tell you.
Remind me the name of that committee again, the
Transportation Management Group.
Thank you.
TMG.
And they
for
are-
the-
They're discussing, I think I missed something, Elizabeth. They're discussing this situation.
Yes,
the track gap issue with the
The track-
wheelchairs getting stuck in the track gap.
Oh, okay.
and so the third one, what I can tell you is, Monday, Robert Monroe, who is, on the 250th celebration committee, and I went into Boston, and it was a meeting with the 4 towns and the legislators and the Secretary of Transportation, Mass DOT, MBTA, about what assistance the state may be able to give us for the 250th. And during that conversation, the MBTA, what I can tell you is, these are the items that we talked about that they're gonna be looking into. Having express trains out to Concord, potential for more trains.
Mhm.
Having the bus that goes to Hanscom actually come out to Concord.
That would be great.
But from and also they are looking to extend the weekend pass program to have it go through Monday. So it's a $10 pass and you can ride the commuter rail as much as you want.
Oh, that's awesome.
They are also going to look into, taking the 250th logo and incorporating that into their marketing material. So there's a lot of things happening, with that from a transportation aspect. The 4 towns are moving forward with issuing a request for proposals to have basically a transportation coordinator for that. And so number 3, at the end, I asked the MBTA to add to the list to look at least having a temporary accessible platform
Yeah.
before next April. So that is, been elevated.
Thank you.
They have a list of where for temporary accessible platforms.
Mhm.
And so they are gonna evaluate that list.
It is a thing.
It is a thing.
Is it the elevator kind where there's
I'm
like,
not sure.
I was just
Yeah.
talking to a Wellesley select board member last night about, they were looking into trying to get something, because neither of their stations are accessible either, and they were talking about something that was like an elevator, basically.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure, but they said they would evaluate the list and hopefully
Elizabeth?
get this bumped up. Yep.
Yeah,
Go
a couple
ahead,
of
Mike.
historical data points. For the 100th anniversary in 1875, when the population was a lot lower, it was estimated 100,000 people came to Concord.
The estimate currently is 250,000 people for that weekend.
I'm gonna be out of town that
That's
weekend.
probably
I-
realistic,
know.
yeah.
So
I will, one other fact is in 1875, President Grant came to the event in Concord and Lexington.
Yeah, who's gonna come this?
Oh, so for the 250th, it is, already, definite, invitations, I believe, are going out to, the president and, I believe there's people that are sending invitations out to the royal family as well. So, yeah,
Ow. Right.
all bets are off after that, but
That royal family.
yeah.
We may not want to be in town that weekend.
Right. So I have a quick question for you, Elizabeth. Was there a conversation about car parking and remote car parking as part of this?
Oh, there's
there's
a
a lot
full
going on.
board town-wide, planning process that is happening. And that's part of the RFP for the transportation coordinator who would actually, coordinate the, the satellite parking areas. They're estimating, like the number of bus companies and shuttle buses, and because there will be road closures around Concord Center, and then where, no vehicles other than emergency personnel, and then hard and soft, what they're calling soft closures, where, individual cars, but the shuttle buses, will be, coming in, and satellite parking areas, and that transportation coordinator will coordinate. It's like, okay, satellite parking A is full, start directing people to, and that's what, this RFP that the 4 towns are working on is looking to address. So yes, that is all. The 4 towns have been working for over a year now on developing this plan, so.
Okay.
Identify the four.
So
Thank
I
you.
have one more
Yeah,
question.
Four towns are which,
Arlington, Lincoln, Lexington, and Concord.
how come Acton's not on there?
Acton's not a town on the Battle Road.
Okay, it's because of Battle Road,
yeah.
although they had soldiers at Minutemen.
So,
Well, a lot of,
A lot of
Yeah.
towns
but,
did.
So,
But just-
so
just
my,
to clar-
could I just throw in one other thing? Hopefully part of the planning process is like bikes and peds from the remote parking, and
Yep.
maybe doing some sort of like signage or, some sort of mapping so that people know where to go, or, just something that makes it a little easier, and then having those routes actually marked out with, something that makes it safe for people to ride their bikes and encourage people to do
That could
that.
actually be a safe data bicycle.
Right, yeah, I think that's the
Maybe.
idea, is to
Yeah, the roads
make it
will all be
safe and make
parking
it fun.
lots, so I want to rein us back into the agenda, but it sounds like either at our next meeting on May 30th or the following one on June 20th, maybe, I should put on the agenda 250th transportation related updates or things, or,
next one?
whenever.
sure.
Yeah,
But my last update is.
Yes, please.
That, engineering division is already, reaching out to the MBTA regarding, the Cottage Lane issues.
Oh, good, okay. Because I had heard, Mark Howell I talked to him just this morning, and he wasn't
Yeah.
sure what status was, but that's great. Yeah, and some of those things, it's a negotiation, because if it's their
Well,
land,
some
they
of them
have
it's
rights,
not
but some of
the
it's
T,
not.
some of it's Keolis.
Really?
So,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
that's, the fact that, as everybody knows, the T subcontracts the train service
Yep.
to a private company, so. Okay, let's move to the next thing, so, first discussion of age-friendly Concord survey results, so, our, Economic Vitality Director, Mimi Graney, together with MAPC and in collaboration with the Council on Aging, I think, et cetera, has done this, age-friendly Concord, survey. And she sent me I sent out to the members here, the results, and I'll just, if you guys, this is the summary from MVPC. But you take a copy. And there are some transportation related things, and I don't think we need to go into a deep discussion now. I think in the interest of time, that's not. But, some of the things that come out are concerns about, pedestrian crossings. One thing I thought was interesting was, the certain, what you might call pedestrian amenities that encourage people to walk, such as having benches or places to sit down at reasonable intervals, because somebody who might walk half a mile might need to sit down and then walk another half mile, this type of thing. Same thing if you're cycling, having a place to stop can be very helpful. If a kind of a shocking thing brought up is there's no public restrooms in West Concord Center, which,
It's a huge one.
even though it's not a transportation issue, it kind of is, because you might prefer to drive so you can get back home in 5 minutes rather than half an hour. So anyway, so I just asked people to look at this. I have the raw, Mimi sent me also the raw, written in comments. So I can pass those on to Elizabeth and Heather to pass out. And I talked to Mimi, and she, will come to either our next or our next meeting to kind of present more. And so if people can think about this, what they want to highlight or ask questions, for that meeting. I wanted to kind of kick that off. And she was in favor of that.
So I'll give you another update. So our, I think Beth Williams, did some of this, but our planning intern Janelle, going around and doing a photo documentation of some of the existing benches and
Hmm.
bike racks that have already been approved by the Historic Districts Commission. Beth and Mimi, based on the age-friendly survey responses,
Hmm.
did a map of, potential
great.
locations.
Okay.
So Ann Clifford, the senior planner, works with the HDC, and I will go through and each one of those locations identify an appropriate bench for that setting.
Mhm.
Because they would have to be approved by the Historic
Sure.
Districts
Mhm.
Commission, but if it is one that's already been approved and contextually, like one location that, I've always advocated for, when you come out the reformatory branch on Monument Street,
Mhm. Mhm.
probably a wood bench,
Mhm.
but
Sure.
right there.
Yeah, there are these
It's
certain
kind of,
intersections.
from a walking standpoint, from Monument Square up to the North Bridge,
Mhm.
that's almost halfway.
Yeah, no. perfect.
And so that, so those, so that's what we were doing right now. We'll pull together that list. And then Beth will be back next week. There's a grant. I think it's due the end of the month.
Mhm.
And we're going to submit a grant to purchase, for the purchase and installation of those. We'll need to pull in highway and grounds,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
all of them will be located more than likely in a public space.
Mhm.
And whether, we'll just have to figure out how, how they get installed, because the surface they're on has to be, ADA accessible as well, so.
And so the grant that you're submitting is for benches specifically, or are bike racks included as well?
We're gonna try and loop in the bike racks as well.
Especially from a accessibility perspective, one of the things that I would love for this committee to do is come up with a set of guidelines, even if they're not required guidelines, but a set of recommendations for bike racks. Because especially when you start considering cargo bikes and adaptive bikes for people with disabilities, a lot of the bike racks that we currently have installed in Concord are very difficult to use, or in some cases not usable at all.
Okay. that's a good point.
And like there's some really great examples of places where we've done really well. The West Concord covered bike parking next to the train station is an excellent example, as is there are some, they call them lollipop racks that were installed next to the Christian Science Reading Room adjacent to Monument Square. That's like one of the best bike parking situations in all of Concord.
Okay.
And
well,
so I'd love to codify that in some way, where we have like, these are the bike parking guidelines that the town follows. And then if we've got a business that wants to install racks, we have a document that we can send them that's just like, here's best practices that
Yeah.
you should follow, so that people are not installing wave racks, which are like seem good, but if you're actually a cyclist, you know that they're like
Yeah.
more or less useless.
So
So
I'll
yeah.
touch base with you. I mean, I can tell you.
I'm sure
At least
you-
in the historic districts, I'm not even gonna attempt to figure out what kind of covered parking might work.
Well, not even covered, but just in terms of the shape of the racks
shape of the
themselves.
racks,
well,
yeah.
it's good for users to point out what things work and what things
Mhm.
don't, collecting
Definitely.
that, so that's an input.
Yeah.
And especially collecting pictures or documentation of things that work well, it's very helpful, because then you can say to the historic
So
commission, would this work?
If you have, you and Phil pictures
Mhm.
from that adaptive aspect.
Yeah.
Of bike racks at work, and that you can send to me, that would be great.
I will send I can send that, and maybe if we could put this on the next agenda, I'd be happy to come.
What would we call it?
Just like bike rack
bike rack,
guidelines or something like that.
Okay.
I'd be happy to come back next time.
Design guidelines.
Yeah,
Yeah.
design guidelines, because
Okay, sure, that's
I've
wonderful.
already started it
So
and there's
that's
so
on
many
the
great,
30th of May. the next
yeah.
one. Okay, sure.
So-
So bike rack design guidelines, what works and doesn't.
So can I
So I'll
throw
send
in,
you a draft and then we'll discuss it at the next meeting. Sure.
can I throw in a pitch for one other thing, which would be to install, you know, those pump stations that there's one on the Bruce Rim Rail Trail and there are also several at the grade schools. If we could have one of those installed behind the visitor center where the bike share currently is, you know, somewhere in that vicinity, that would be great. That's sort of a destination point for cyclists because of the restroom. And those, it's a bike pump and tools, etc. It's very heavy duty. And Elizabeth, I think you know what I'm talking about, right?
I think I have one. I think I have one in a box that got ordered by Marcia and never installed.
Oh, well,
Okay.
that would be an ideal
That's the
place
last-
to put
I
it.
don't know, I
because-
know it has the tools, I don't know if it has the pump, and I seem to recall, sorry, I think it was supposed to be put where the bike rack is by the war memorial. There's a.
Yeah.
Is that where there's the lollipop, is that, Laura, what you're talking about, is that? You know, the little seating area that
Yes.
nobody sits in because it's not inviting?
Yeah, I think the
And nobody
visitors,
wants
I
to
think
sit
the
on
visitor
parking.
center is.
I think the
probably
visitor
better.
center's a
But we
better
can talk-
location
talk to-
because
talk
that's
to
where
Beth.
people tend to
The-
gather.
So I put
But,
that.
you know,
the-
either spot, because it's in
Yeah.
downtown, you know, in Concord Center, and either spot would be good.
Okay.
I'll send Beth an email.
So we'll put this specifically on the next agenda, and so I want to go quickly to we have two more things. We have no correspondence, but I want to allow some time for liaison observer comments. So with regard to the comprehensive plan, the discussion I had with Elizabeth and some of the other staff on Friday, the staff is going back to the consultant with negotiating a adjustment of the plan and targets, and I think good progress is being made there. In addition to trying to focus the plan. There are discussions, I think, going on within the staff about how better to organize and staff transportation, planning and transportation actions between different divisions and departments. I think what is going to happen is at either the May 30th or the June 20th meeting, staff and possibly with the consultant, representative consultant present, TAC will be presented with what the updated approach is. So that's really all I have to say on that,
A
because I think
question.
it's really. Yes, go ahead.
A question regarding what they're going to be asking the consultant to do. It was clear from the town manager's comments at the town meeting that she's expecting that what's going to come out of that is something that will help the town figure out what the right amount of money is to spend on road maintenance and improvements. So is what you heard from that meeting, is that included in what the group?
I think that's one of the things. I know that at the initial meeting to the TAC, where Stantec presented and the deputy town manager Megan Zamuto was present, she specifically asked the question about are there going to be any, high level dollar estimates of what certain things cost, and they said, oh, absolutely. So I think the idea of how do we continue to fund both maintenance and other transportation related work is important. And in there, I think there's a discussion of whether or not to sort of include focus on a particular I think there's discussion of helping prioritize what to fix first that will have the most benefit to the town as a whole. Because we can't, the idea of just doing it sort of shotgun here, there, et cetera, is not what a comprehensive plan is about. So, and there are constraints of, financial and other constraints. So, another thing is, Terry, I'll let you talk in a second, but I did talk to Terry yesterday, and one of the things that I think, is very, would be very helpful would be in the plan to have, something about how to implement better public transportation, because I think that has so many benefits. So Terry?
Right, so I did meet also with Megan and Carrie. And Megan,
With Carrie, right?
I met with Megan and Carrie together.
Okay,
And we spent an hour talking about how to improve the whole process with transportation. And so Megan is going to draft hopefully a one-page draft of the amended scope of services for the consultant, and then send it to TAC about a week before your meeting. And then the consultant will be coming to that meeting. And at that meeting, if you guys could be prepared to look at that draft and have a discussion with the consultant and finalize the scope of services. And so far what Megan has on there is 2 or 3 possible things. One thing is the roadway maintenance and improvement that's going to go to town meeting in 2025. What TAC and the consultant would do would be to prioritize complete streets process for this, for things like sidewalks, intersections, connections. And Laura, I brought up your framework idea. And so that's one whole idea that the consultant could help with. Whoops. Am I still there?
You're still here.
Okay.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, another possible thing is public transportation. They could help prioritize how and help us figure that out. And the third possible thing that came up is they could help us organize better our whole transportation process. I personally don't think we need that third one from a consultant. I think having Elizabeth here today is fantastic. And once we have a transportation planner, and I think we can probably figure all that out ourselves. But anyway, the whole idea is that you're going to get a 1 or 2 page amended scope of services as a draft. Please be prepared to discuss it with the consultant and get it finalized so they can get going.
When you say finalized, Terry, that sounds like whatever we decide with them at that meeting is what's going to happen.
That's right.
So you're saying TAC
Finally.
is going to decide what the priorities are for the consultant? I just want to make
Yes.
sure.
Finally, finally, we're able, TAC, you see, the staff is doing what Elizabeth is doing today, answering questions, doing research, providing links, but TAC is the policy group. You guys are supposed to instruct what this study is all about, and you were left out of the process when we did the scope of services. So now we have a second chance to go back, and I've gotten Megan and Carrie to agree the consultant is going to show up at your meeting, but we want that meeting to be really productive. We don't want to go in circles. We want to be really prepared and use everyone's time wisely. So Megan is going to draft up some ideas in advance for you guys to react to, and then the consultant will facilitate the discussion and get things finalized with you.
Okay, so we're meeting every 3 weeks. The next meeting is on 5:30, which would mean a week ahead of time would be 2 weeks from now. I'm not sure if we're gonna meet that, so it might be the next meeting after that. I don't know how long these things take. I just want to add a couple comments too, that to me personally, I agree with you, Terry, that as far as, you know, municipal structure and organization, the consultant, at least this group doesn't, that's not their expertise, and that's something that staff can work out themselves, the town, you know, management and town government, and if they need consulting services along those lines, they can identify that it's a totally different thing. And the staffing challenges and stuff and the transitions of personnel and stuff is, you know, both a big challenge and also an opportunity to kind of put things on new track and different understandings. I think that the way I would put it as tax roll is, I think, you know, if staff does all this work, realigning things with the consultant has a plan, then we can kind of help tune or prioritize that or whatever in the way that we think best serves the public interest and sort of sets the role, you know, a kind of forward going policy. But I'm very grateful that staff is that staff is doing all of that detailed work about kind of aligning things in terms of, you know, contracts, et cetera, because that's not our, I mean, I don't think any of us have that particular experience and expertise of municipal service contracting. The next thing, I'm gonna just make it like super short.
Phil has that.
Oh, Phil, go ahead, Phil.
So I'm sorry, I have to leave the meeting a little early. But I did want to remind everyone that there is a planned walk audit with the Safe Routes to School program tomorrow at the Thoreau School. That's going to start at 9 o'clock. We'll be meeting with the engineer, the staff person for the Safe Routes to School program, the principal, and anybody else who might be interested in that planning and observation process. So if you're interested, just show up at the Thoreau School tomorrow at 9, and I expect about an hour to an hour and a half observation. And sorry, I have to leave.
Phil, before you leave, just so you know, when you leave, we lose our quorum, so
Oh, okay.
we need to conclude the meeting if you're gonna leave.
Yeah, I have to leave in 2 minutes in order.
No,
to
you
my
do not
train.
have to conclude the meeting. If you have a quorum when it starts, that's all you need. It's fine.
Yeah, we're not gonna take any votes anyway, so I think we're fine.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. I gotta
I
make
think
a
we're
train
all
to
out
get to
in
Boston.
public, it's recorded, I don't think there's a problem.
Okay,
So,
so
in fact.
tomorrow at 9, thanks a lot. Great meeting, Mark. Really appreciate it. And
Okay.
thanks to Elizabeth for all of her.
Thanks for
hard work.
helping us have the quorum. Thanks, Phil.
All right, take
okay,
care.
So then why don't we put off, people just think about, you know, with respect to the tax rolls and the adjustment of the entire organization based on transportation in the town, and we'll do that next time. So we don't have correspondence. I will open the floor to liaison comments and then public comments. So Terry, you have something additional you want to say?
Just really quickly, I think this was a great meeting, and one of the things that's really good is, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for doing all of that research and giving all these updates. This is the way it should function. The TAC gives priorities and suggestions, and the staff then says, well, this is realistic, this is not, this is what we've done so far, this, you know, et cetera. And those facts have been missing. So I would recommend that you have a regular 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever in every meeting where Elizabeth or our new transportation planner can give an update to answer questions and give updates. Also on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, that question came up a few minutes ago. I want to give you an update on that. So TAC had talked about maybe in 6 months being able to absorb that, but how busy you guys are now and how maybe it fits in the Trails Committee, but it's more than a recreation trail. So Megan actually had another idea that I think makes a lot of sense, that it go to the Public Works Commission, because it's going to be a maintenance operation now. The construction is basically complete. And even the Junction Park discussion with the MBTA is gonna have to do with engineering. So I am now going to be meeting with the new chair of Public Works, Sven Weber, to discuss that. And I just want to make sure that everybody in TAC is okay if Public Works agrees to take Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Well, I guess we're missing Phil now, but does anybody on TAC have a problem with that?
No,
The only thing that I would say, I think that that makes a lot of sense because of the majority of the issues that are gonna come up on the Bruce Freeman going forward. I just think that it's very important that the TAC is consulted when they're talking about policies that impact transportation. And specifically, and there really aren't many of them, but specifically winter clearing, that is a transportation issue. Because it is the only grade separated crossing of Route 2 within the town of Concord, so we should be consulted if they're gonna talk about that. And then the other thing is that if certain users were going to be limited, or, you know, if they were gonna change who's allowed to use the trail, that also has a transportation impact. So I would just say that those two functions, you know, we need to be consulted if there are gonna be decisions made on those things.
Absolutely, like the e-bike policy,
No,
or
no,
like,
I think it's a good move too, Terry. One other thing, this issue of snow removal and clearance, they have to also consult Natural Resources Department. A lot of the trail goes near sensitive areas, and there's going to be a real issue about what happens with the snow, storm, water drainage, and also the use of salt, which could be a real problem. So they definitely need to talk with Natural Resources about any snow clearance or salt
yeah,
use.
and I don't think they have much budget for snow clearance anyway, so I think it's really going to be kind of involved figuring that out. And the other issue that TAC would get involved with might be when we have to coordinate with other towns, like we did with the uniform signage. So it's not that TAC won't be involved, but it's like you won't have to have a special subcommittee or anything.
I think you're right. It's more operational at this point. Yeah, operational issues.
Yeah, but TAC would like updates, so whatever form they take, updates and coordination is great. Okay, I'm gonna open it up for public comment. Does anybody want to make a brief public comment? Mary. I'll give you Mary first. Oh, okay, you go first.
Oh,
I'm sorry, your name and
Peter
name.
Lee, 140 Walden Street.
Yes, hi, Peter.
I'm Chair of the Haywood Meadow Stewardship Committee.
Oh, yes.
I'm speaking for myself
Okay.
because obviously they're not here and I don't have a prepared statement.
Okay.
Do you want to come from this side?
Would you mind repeating your address for the vote?
Peter Lee, 140 Walden Street.
Thank you.
I'm going to start.
So,
You might be able to hear here.
I've only been chair for a year and a half. My predecessor wrote to this committee 2-3 years ago requesting action on an intersection.
And the traffic management group, I think.
And the traffic management group, and copied acting the chief of police.
Mhm.
2022, we renewed the request. Last year, I made a request.
Mhm.
We have had no action yet, and I want to explain the background because I think it's hard to understand.
Okay, if you could do, brief.
Very brief.
Yes, yeah.
And to add urgency to the problem.
Mhm.
So here is Haywood Meadow. This is an intersection that is right in Haywood Meadow, Haywood Street, Walden Street.
Mhm.
And it is a traffic pattern that has had lots of accidents involving cars with bicycles. No pedestrian has been run over yet, but we are very concerned that that may happen because the pedestrian pattern is different than bicycle. It is going from the west side town center, Emerson Field Umbrella Center, Art Center, CCHS, through Walden Street, Haywood Street, into Haywood Meadow. The reason they do that is that for pedestrians, there's great motivation to get to the Concord Museum, the Olcott House, Emerson House, Battle Road, National Park. If you look at Lonely Planet guides, they recommend it. If you look at Concord tourist guides, they recommend it. There's a lot of pedestrian foot traffic through Haywood Meadow on the Bay Circuit Trail and the informal path that goes to the Emerson Thoreau ending. These are two separate paths that are heavily trafficked. young people, tourist town people, myself, going to Concord Museum. Concord Museum has increased their programming. They have lectures all the time. We go all the time. Every time we do it, I'm afraid I'm gonna be run over. Because there's no pedestrian crossing. There are reasons for it historically, but I think the reasons are past. And I think that if you just go and walk there, you will see that the only way to get to the northeast of Haywood Meadow, all those attractions over there for pedestrians is to walk through across Walden Street or across Haywood Street. No pedestrian crossing. There's a yield sign, and then there's a stop sign. The yield sign has sight lines so that the driver from Walden Street turns right. He's worried about bicycles and cars from the left. He's looking left while going right. Extremely dangerous. When I cross there, I look both ways. I step in, I look both ways again. In the middle of the street, I look both ways again. And very often in the middle of the road, I see a car coming. I see the driver looking the other way. There are CCHS track runners who go through here.
It's bad for the cars too.
For the cars, it's scary.
It's terrible.
I drive there all the time.
This is a much larger conversation than
Yes,
just.
we're not gonna, we're gonna listen to the
I
comment.
don't expect action,
No, we're gonna.
but I think that
we
it's
wanna have
helpful
the
if you
input.
see this map, and I'll leave it with you,
Okay,
because it shows that there's really a great motivation for pedestrians between these two cultural centers in town.
Mhm.
And that there's really no way to do it safely unless you have a pedestrian way. And to do it, you need to probably change that island or a traffic sign. And that could solve the problems of bicyclists as well, or it may not. It just depends. Our request is that you think about it and pass it on to the traffic management group. They're the one that need to act, but they won't act until you've thought about it. So we're asking you to, if you want, we're happy to make a presentation. If you don't need it, that's fine too. But let me know. I am the contact on this issue for my committee. And any questions you have, I'm happy to help, just to expedite it. Next year, 2025, there's going to be huge traffic. There's going to be all kinds of suggestions for people to walk across here. If we don't have a solution, we're going to ask the police to have a policeman there. Not just on the April 19th, but on many events throughout the year. If this can be solved before then, fantastic. We can't as soon as possible.
What's your committee's name? I didn't.
Haywood Meadow Stewardship Committee, I'm the current chair. The previous chair made this request 2-3 years ago, and I'm renewing it.
And is the Haywood Meadow Stewardship Committee a town committee or a?
It is.
Subcommittee of the NRC.
Mm.
One of the four.
One of four. And you mentioned something like the emerald necklace?
No,
Like the emerald. necklace.
And.
No.
Emerson
The-
Trail.
Emerson and
Is a trail.
Oh.
Is a trail.
That the
Yeah,
trail.
Yeah, the trail, yeah.
So it's,
I thought we had another emerald
No.
necklace.
No.
the fact is that it's a place where multiple modes of transportation crisscross each other.
Absolutely.
And it deserves attention, I think, and so, I would like to put it on a future PAC agenda. I would request that, you go back to the committee and, try to figure out what's the most efficient way to present the problems and challenges as
Yes.
you see them.
Yes.
And I will try to arrange that some of the other, staff involved, from Public Works or
That would
Public
be-
Safety,
That would be really good.
if we could all
It
get
would accelerate
together
the
and
process.
have a discussion, just put the current facts on the table with relevant people and then tax
Yes.
and kind of give, deliberate a little bit. I think that'd be the most effective,
I think
instead of
any-
sending letters back and forth and. things like that.
Absolutely.
So we'll put it
I
on-
read the letters. They're not good enough.
Well, no, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
From the
Can,
drivers. That has been
It's scary, the
as a
weather.
driver.
Yes.
so if you have,
We were
if you have
happy.
some documents, I mean, if there's any more documentation like this that you could send to me and or Elizabeth.
Yep.
So I would like to set up a meeting, whether it's the one in 3 weeks or in 6 weeks or whatever, but we put as much on the table as possible relevant to this with the right people and accomplish what we can.
We will do that.
Okay,
Whatever works for you, we'll do it.
okay.
And Mark, when
Thanks.
you're preparing that agenda, I would just urge you to look back at I don't remember the date of our meeting where
Mhm.
we discussed this issue, but we did have a long discussion about this issue at this committee meeting.
Yes, yes,
Maybe about a year ago, and so it would be a good idea for us to
we can review that.
review that and see where things
Okay.
landed.
Okay,
As Elizabeth said, this is a very complicated issue with a lot of people and departments and budget considerations involved, so.
there's a lot to say, but I don't want to deliberate. right now,
Yeah.
so,
Okay,
Okay,
thank you very much.
thank you.
I'll leave one
Thanks for
sheet with
coming.
you, I'll keep the other.
Excellent, thank you.
Before I begin that.
Your name?
Yeah, my name is Mary
Serial number?
Weinberg. Serial, I'm not giving my social security number. Weinberg, Hillside Avenue. And before I begin, for the first time, I'm gonna say I'm proudly an activist. There's a saying in front of by the Right Tavern that the first person put it said, activism is the rent we pay for living on this planet, Alice Walker. So from now on, I denied it when I got involved in the eighties. The paper was always calling me a citizen activist. And I thought, coming from New York, to be an activist, I had to do really different things than asking that the weeds pull up the rest. So I'm a citizen activist. I was involved for all the attention to detail in West Concord that wasn't being done. Steve Schaefer called me one day when I finally he realized that he said, let's burn the whole place down and start from the beginning. As a designer, this is going back in the early eighties, I saw the potential for West Concord. He called me one day and said, Mary, we're going to lease the land next to the depot, which now is called Junction Park, for 100 years from EOTC. Elizabeth, do you mind pulling up the map? Because I wonder if the map that you showed, the Junction Park, the area on the left, because I was also involved with the MBTA, working directly with the head of construction, the head of the T on every
This
single
one?
such thing around it. Yeah. Is this area here? Is that part of the park or is that part of the MBTA? Because I was involved with
Nick.
both.
Nick
And the-
and Carrie
yeah.
can follow.
I'm emailing back and forth with the town clerk, because I'm not sure
Okay.
you can continue.
Okay.
Well, no,
so-
this is,
I'm just saying, I'm not sure you can continue this meeting without a
Oh.
quorum. So on
This-
this map right here,
Yeah, that particular on the
um,
left.
yep, so see this little line right here?
Yeah.
That's the edge of pavement for the parking lot.
Okay, so to the
So,
right is part
all
of
of
Junction
this-
Park.
All of this right in here, there's this little bit of area right here. And then this little teeny, this darker line and that thin line, that's part of the existing parking.
Okay, and I'm saying-
But all of that is currently part of Junction
Okay,
Park.
so everything in Junction Park, that is Junction Park, is owned by the EOTC, not the MBTA. So now
Is owned by.
EOTC, that's what Steve Schaefer, as I
who's
said,
E-
Steve Schaefer was our town manager,
No, who's EOT?
Executive Office of Transportation and Construction.
Okay, so, all right, so
Not
it has
MBTA.
it has a different,
They have
Acronym now.
different, no, well,
But-
they have different secretaries. The head of the MBT is underneath EOTC. Like Tom Glenn was the head of the MBTA that I worked with, but EOTC was over. It's an umbrella over it. So all I know is Steve Schaefer called me in like 1988, and he said, we're going to lease it from EOTC for 100 years. I think for $1. Mary, we're gonna build a park. And he asked me, I was one of the group that first was involved. It was a terrible design, but that's how it began. So you can look back the year it started. So suddenly in 99 years, none of us would be here, whatever, suddenly the lease is up. Then
Mary, can I make a suggestion? Why don't we plan to put a detailed discussion of this after we do a little
Okay.
more discovery at a
Okay.
future meeting on the agenda? And let me end the PAC
Okay.
meeting right now,
Okay,
and we can talk amongst ourselves
Yeah.
just in, formally for a few
Yeah.
minutes about sort of next steps. not as TAC,
Okay.
but just as citizens sharing information.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I'm ending the Transportation Committee meeting for today, or discussion.
Can I talk informally now? Or just to tell you, because I think it's important.
Did you stop?